look at this first example, what I said to you on Monday and what should always be in the back of your mind is your order of work. So when I say order of work, I mean, think about BODMAS. We need to be very, very careful that when we start to simplify our expressions, we are doing it in the correct order. Now, the reason this is so important is this is going to be something that we expect you to be able to do from about grade 9, grade 10. So as things start getting more complicated, these basics, we just expect you to be able to do. We're not going to reteach you this stuff. We're not going to go over this stuff. We just expect you to know it. And one of my matrics actually today had a moment where she was like, oh, I completely forgot about distribution, something that you learn in grade 8 and grade 9. And so was making really silly mistakes that shouldn't be made. And that's because we're forgetting these basics. So it's so important that we focus on these basics and we get them right. Okay, so excuse me. If we go and have a look at our expression, we've got 3 times x plus 5 in the bracket, minus 4 times 3x minus 7. So guys, remember the very first thing that we always do is we identify what terms we are working with. Now, when we identify terms, or if we want to know how many terms are in an expression, we are looking for plus and minus signs that are outside of brackets or fractions. So in this case, I do have a minus sign and a plus sign inside brackets, but they're inside the brackets. I don't care about them. The only sign I actually care about in terms of my terms is this negative. That is separating my expression into 2 terms. So I can see that I have got my first term here of the 3 times the bracket x plus 5, and my second term of negative 4 times the bracket 3x minus 7. Sorry, I don't know why that b keeps popping up, but whatever. We've got 2 terms. And now that we know the next thing that we need to do is we need to simplify our individual terms. Okay, so once we know what our terms are, it makes the simplification a lot easier because we're breaking down our simplification into chunks. Okay, let me first deal with the first term, and then I can deal with the second term rather than just trying to do everything all at once. So if we want to simplify this first term, remember in both of these terms, what I have going on is distribution. So this coefficient of 3, I need to multiply into my bracket to the x and to the 5. And this coefficient of negative 4, I need to multiply into my bracket to 3x and negative 7. Now, remember, if you're not feeling too comfortable, do a little working out space for yourself on the side to help you see what it is that you're doing, to help you be comfortable with what it is that we're doing. And so I'm going to have 2 little working out blocks here for myself in order to do this distribution. So for the first term, we've got 3 times x plus 5. We need to say 3 times x, we need to distribute, and we need to say 3 times the positive 5. Again, we're distributing. We know that 3 times x gives us 3x, and we know that 3 times 5 gives us 15. So this first term simplified is 3x plus 15. Now we have to deal with that second term. We've got the minus 4 times 3x minus 7. We again need to distribute. But guys, really important, the second you see minus signs, we need to be careful of what happens when we times with a negative. So in the first distribution, we've got a negative 4 times a positive 3x. And in the second, we've got the negative 4 times a negative 7. I'm just putting it in brackets because of that negative. So the first one, a negative times a positive, we know gives us a negative answer. Remember, if we go back to what we've been speaking about previously, SNB, signs first, then numbers, then variables. So I've just dealt with my sign. Now I'm going to deal with my numbers, which means I'm going to say 4 times 3, which gives me 12. And then my variable, I only have an x, so it's minus 12x. My last distribution, I've got a negative times a negative. So when dealing with the signs, a negative times a negative is now a positive. You don't have to write the positive there, but just remember it is positive. I go on to my numbers, 4 times 7, which is 28. There's no variables here, so I don't need to worry. And so the second term simplifies to minus 12x plus 28. Okay, so once we know what terms it is that we're working with, we then need to simplify each of those terms so that we can eventually do the final step, which is to add and subtract like terms. Now remember, if you were here on Monday, we did a lot of adding and subtracting of like terms. Like terms are terms that have the same variable and same exponent. And I always say to you, grab a highlighter, grab a colored pen or something, and identify your like terms for yourself. So I see I've got a term with an X in it, and I have a second term with an X in it. Those would be classified as like terms. I then also have my constant terms that have no variables whatsoever. They are also like terms to each other. And so what that means is I can now add them. Now, again, if you would prefer to group your like terms together, so put them next to each other to make it easier to add or subtract, that is absolutely fine. But then we need to do exactly that. So 3x minus 12x. Think of it in terms of a number line, guys, or just use your calculator. You're starting at 3 and you need to subtract 12, which means you're going to end up with a negative value. And that gives us a negative 9x. We then have positive 15 plus 28, which gives us a positive 43. Let me just make sure my maths is right there, 38. Yes, positive 43. We always double check to see if we have any more like terms. I don't in this case. This term has an X. This term has no variables, so they're not like terms. And once I've completed adding and subtracting my like terms, I have simplified my expression. Okay, just a couple things quickly. Guys, please remember your questions need to be focused on what I'm doing in this lesson. If you have other questions, you need to use the Watobe wizard, or you need to go and see if there's videos on Watobe's website to help you. Okay, in this hour, we're focusing on algebra. Secondly, when you can't see the screen, Yolanda has posted a message there twice. Please use that. If you're still struggling, please send her a message and we can try to help you. She will let me know if I need to reshare my screen. Okay, so I'm just going to stop here, take a screenshot. And while we're waiting for everyone to screenshot, I want to know if there's any questions that I need to answer before we try another example. Remember, you can raise your hand if you have questions at this point. This is the point where I say, if you have questions, raise your hand. So you are welcome to now. If not, take those screenshots and then we're going to do another example. Okay, good, grade 8s. Okay, Joshua. You need to click to unmute yourself.
Ma'am, I don't understand the part where, like, how you.
Okay, Joshua, just hang on. I can't hear you. You need to just give me a second. Let's try again.
The part where you plus and minus and the first row. Don't understand how you plus with the x's in there.
Okay, I still can't really hear you, but are you asking me, or are you saying that you're not too sure why I added rather the 3x and the minus 12x?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm adding them, remember, because they are what we call like terms. So this is step 3 here. I can only add or subtract like terms. Like terms have the same variable or variables and the same exponents. And now because both of those terms have an x in them, I can add them together And then the ones I've highlighted in gray, those are terms without a variable. So they're definitely not the same. One has an X, one doesn't. So I can't just add together things that are not like terms. I have to only add like terms.
All right, ma'am. Thanks for helping me.
Okay, so guys, really importantly, and some of you have also sent me messages about this, you can only add like terms. If you are just adding everything, so if you have said 3x plus 15 minus 12x plus 28 and gotten a final answer, that is incorrect. You are just adding everything. You can't do that. You have to add oranges and oranges, apples and apples, x's with x's, constants with constants. Okay, that is really, really important. Yes, Amungile, 15 and 28 are indeed like terms. I have added them together. So there they are. Added together, they get 43. Remember, I'm adding like terms. X is added together, 9x. That's exactly what we're doing. We're adding like terms. All right. We don't put the numbers in the brackets. I honestly don't really know what you mean. If you want to raise your hand and ask that question to me, I'm not sure what you mean about we don't put numbers in the brackets. Remember, the whole point of simplifying is to get rid of the brackets. We want no brackets at the end. So we need to distribute in order to get rid of the brackets. Don't know if that answers your question. If not, please do raise your hand. Yeah. Right, Nomki, yes, we spoke about this on Monday. If there's more than one variable and they're not in an order, so like if they're not in alphabetical order, they are still like terms. So X and Y and X are like terms. Remember, you can reorder variables to put them in alphabetical order to help yourself if you need to. And if you're not too sure, go and watch Monday's recording. Mohila, I'm not too sure again what you mean, which are the like terms. I've highlighted the like terms, so the colors indicate which terms are like terms. Those are the like terms. Okay, so let's have a look at another question. Hopefully this will sort out any problems you have, but if not, again, we will deal with questions in a second or two. Let's have a look at question B. So again, we're going to follow the same 3 steps, grade 8s. We're not changing what we're doing. We do the same thing every single time when we simplify. First thing we do is we identify our terms. I'm just going to keep writing these steps. Terms are identified with plus and minus signs, but we don't consider plus or minus signs in a bracket or in a fraction. So I don't care about that one. I don't care about that one. I only care about that one. That is splitting this expression into 2 terms. So that means that my first term is 6 times the bracket 5x minus 12. And my second term is minus 9 times the bracket 2x minus 3. Once I have done that, my second step, I'm going to maybe color coordinate, maybe that'll help, is to simplify each term. Each term. Now, guys, when I say simplify each term, what I mean is we are either going to have to deal with any distribution. So here I can see that I'm distributing. We might, it depends on the question, have to deal with an exponent or exponents. And we might have to deal with division or with a fraction. Okay, so when you are simplifying each term, when you're on your second step, those are the things that you're looking out for. You're looking to see, can you distribute? Is there a square that you have to deal with? Is there a fraction that you need to simplify? That is what we're doing in the second step. Grade 8s, when I say take a screenshot, you need to take a screenshot. When I move on, we're moving on. If you missed question A, you now need to wait until I'm done with question B and I will make it smaller and you can have a look. But please, when I say screenshot, do it. Otherwise, we're just wasting time. So for step 2, I need to distribute. So I need to take in the first term, the 6 and multiply it with the 5x. So remember, you can do a little working out for yourself on the side. Let's just do that. So 6 times 5x. 6 times 5 is 30, and then we have the x, so that gives me 30x. And then we also need to distribute the 6 to the negative 12. So positive 6 times a negative 12 gives us negative 36. So that is, this whole expression here is me distributing the first term. I then need to do exactly the same thing with my second term. I need to go and I need to take the negative 9 and I need to multiply it to these two terms in my bracket. So I've got a negative 9 times a positive 2x. A negative times a positive is a negative. 9 times 2 is 18. And then I have my x. So I've got a negative 18x. Then I've got negative 9 times negative 3. We know a negative times a negative is a positive. And 9 times 3 is 27. So I've got a plus 27. So these two terms that I've got here has come from me simplifying my second term. Right, the very last thing that we do is we add or subtract our like terms. This is where you grab your highlighter or your colored pens or whatever makes you happy, and you start grouping your like terms. So I can see I've got a term with an x, 30x, and I have another term with an x minus 18x. They are like terms. They both have x's in them. And so we have got our first group of like terms. Then we move on and we group our next set of like terms. So here we can see we've got constants, negative 36 and positive 27. And so now we can go and add and subtract our like terms. If you want to write your like terms together, that's fine. You are welcome to reorder. Okay, I see the mistake. I'll fix it now. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll fix it now. So all of you shouting at me, yes, mistake. This is what happens when we're not focused. 6 times negative 12 is indeed negative 72. Thank you for picking that up. So this should be negative 72. Doesn't change my like terms. That's still a like term, but well done. Thank you. So we're grouping the like terms here, grade 8s. So, excuse me, 30x, negative 18x, we put together. Negative 72 plus 27, we group together. If we go back to our colors, those are constants, that's one group. And then those are our terms with x's, another group. And now we can go and add and subtract them. So 30x minus 18x is 12x. Negative 72 plus 27. Now again, guys, just be careful. You are working with a negative number. You're saying negative 72. So imagine that on your number line all the way down on the negative side. And you are adding 27. Okay, so you need to be getting a little bit more positive, but because you're adding a smaller number than the negative 72, it will still be negative, and that is negative 45. These are not like terms. That has an x. This is a constant. Not like terms. I can't do anything else with that. That is my final answer. So well done, all of you picking up my mistake. Well done. Yes, it is indeed negative 72. Right, like I say, silly mistake. That's what happens when we don't concentrate. I don't even know where I got 36 from. Who knows? But there we go. Right. How did I get 45? I said negative 72 plus 27. So on your calculator, you would type minus 72 plus 27, and you will get negative 45. 5. It's just calculator work, guys. Remember, use your calculators. There's no need to try and do this in your head. You can do this in your head. It's not impossible, but use your calculator to check yourself. Right, so for those of you that did not get a screenshot of question A, I've made it a bit smaller. You can now get screenshots of both of them. Those of you that have questions, you may raise your hand to ask the question, or you can put it in the group. It's completely up to you. But now you are taking screenshots and you are asking me questions. And while you're doing that, I can see that this pink might be a bit confusing. Those are two separate things, guys. So this is now for the next question. Akani?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
May I please ask, ma'am? So you said 6 times 5, which gave you 30. Then you said 6 times 12, which gave you 72. Then you moved to the next side, and then you said 9 times 2, which gives you negative 18. Then you said 9 times 3, which gave you 27.
Okay, so just remember your negatives. It's negative 9 times negative 3. But yes, yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, good. Cool. Ntiso?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask, how did you get the plus?
Okay, so this is exactly what I just said now when we were doing the distribution. The plus is coming from, let me just get another color here, negative 9 times negative 3. Remember, negative times a negative is a positive. So when you say negative 9 times negative 3, you get a plus 27.
Oh, thank you. I did it the other way around.
What do you mean?
I said negative 72 and negative 27.
Okay, so just be careful that 27 has to be positive because it's a negative times a negative.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay, so guys, that's a really important point here. Please double check your signs. It's a silly thing, but obviously if your sign is wrong, it means that your answer is wrong. So always double check that you are making sure that you have correctly multiplied, especially when there's a negative. That's where things go a bit wrong. So make sure you have correctly multiplied with your negative sign. Okay. Right, let's have a look at this question C, because this is another one. It's still distribution, nothing new, but this is one where we also get a bit stuck. And this is, no, stop my English. We get stuck here because we're not doing the correct order of work. Okay, so again, first thing we always do, identify our terms. We identify terms by looking for plus and minus signs. I don't care about any signs inside brackets. I only care about the one outside. Okay, so this is separating my expression into two terms, and those two terms are the 4 all by itself, and then the negative 6 times the bracket as my second term. And guys, this is where we go wrong. What we do is we say, okay, cool, 4 minus 6 is negative 2, and then we distribute. We cannot do that. They are two separate terms. You need to keep them separate. Okay, so really, really important is identifying your terms. Remember, once we've identified our terms, we go and simplify our terms. Oops. Now, as you can see, the 4 is just 4. Okay, I can't do anything with 4. 4 is a number, that's it. So that first term doesn't do anything. It's going to stay 4 for now. And now I move on to the second term. The second term does need to be distributed. And some of you in the chat are not following me. And so when you ask questions, I'm not going to explain because you're choosing not to listen. We've got negative 6 that has been distributed to the bracket. So we need to say negative 6 times A and negative 6 times negative 2. So if we do the first one, -6 times a, and negative times a positive is a negative. This is what I just said. Be careful of your signs. And we have our a. It's just there. Doesn't do anything. So we've got -6a. Then we've got the -6 times the -2. Again, be careful of your signs. A negative times a negative is a positive, and 6 times 2 is 12. So we get +12. Now, guys, what you need to see is those brackets are gone. Okay, the whole point of distribution is to get rid of your brackets. They are now gone, which allows us to then move and do our third step, which remember is to add or subtract our like terms. And so we grab our highlighter, we grab our colored pen, whatever it is that we're doing, and we identify our like terms. So the first term is a constant. +12 is also a constant. Those are the ones with no variables. They are like terms. And then separately, we have -6a. It is the only term with an a in it, so it needs to be by itself in its own group. If you want to group them together, that's fine. So 4 + 12, and then the -6a. I've still got my like terms, right? I've just reordered my expression to help me simplify. We know that 4 + 12 is 16, and we've got the -6a, right? These are not like terms. I can't do anything more with that. I'm done. Right now, once again, some of you are not listening to me, and quite frankly, it's just rude. So I'm going to explain this one more time, but that does mean that if anyone asks me a question that I've already explained, when I open up for questions, I am just going to say to you, watch the video. So firstly, we identify our terms. Very, very important, guys. If you don't identify your terms, you are going to make a really silly mistake. So that is the very first thing that we do. 4 is a term by itself. -6 times the bracket is a term by itself. Please listen, I'm explaining. So just hang on questions. No questions right now. Listen to what I'm saying. We have got 2 terms. Term 1 is 4 by itself. Term 2 is -6 times the bracket. We then move on to step 2, which tells us to simplify our terms. 4 is 4. I can't do anything with 4. I leave it. I move on to simplifying this -6 times a minus 2. So if you go here to this block, that's exactly what I've done. I went and I distributed the -6 into the bracket. So there's your answer to where does 12 come from. It is coming from -6 times a is -6a, -6 times -2, +12. So by doing the distribution in the second term, so by taking -6 and multiplying it to the a and multiplying it to the -2, I have gotten the -6a plus 12. Then I go and find my like terms. That's step 3, my last step. That is highlighted for you. 4 and 12 are both constants. They have no variable. So they are like terms. So I can add them together to get my 16. And 6a is a term all by itself. There are no other terms with a in it. And so that means I cannot add or subtract it. It just is -6a. I can't do anything more with it. So guys, as I said right at the start of the question, this is one that we often get wrong. So I really hope you listen to the double explanation I've just given in order to make sure you don't make any mistakes. Right, you are screenshotting. If you have any questions, please ask. But like I said, if you were not listening and I have answered it, you need to watch the video, and I will tell you that. So any questions, raise your hand. So I'm hoping those of you that put questions on the chat about 12a, where does the 12 come from? There was a negative 2 times negative 2a. I'm hoping that we all understand why the answer is 16 minus 6a. Good, well done. Okay, so if we look at question D, and if we just pop back up here to question B, remember one of the things I said we need to look out for when we're simplifying each term is division. So question D now is an example where we now need to be careful of the fact that we have a fraction. Okay, now there's a couple different ways that you can deal with fractions, and I'm going to show you the way that will always work. Okay. So when we encounter a fraction, we still do the same things. We want to identify our terms, simplify our terms, etc., etc. However, if we look at question D, hopefully we can see that we actually only have one term here. That term is the fraction. Okay. Now, if we can't see that, let's quickly chat about why it is only one term. It is only one term because, as I've been saying, we identify terms by looking at for plus and minus signs. But we ignore, remember, ignore plus or minus signs in brackets or in fractions. So here, the only plus or minus sign I have is actually inside the fraction. So I ignore it. And because there's nothing at the beginning, nothing at the end, what I actually have here is one singular term that I now need to try and simplify. So we know that that is the second step. Once I know what terms I have, I need to simplify my terms. And in the case of a fraction, each term, in the case of a fraction, what we're going to do is we sort of use a technique or a style of distribution. But basically what we do is we know that when we've got multiple terms in our numerator, all over one denominator. So if there's lots going on in the top, but only one number in the bottom, we know that all of those terms in the numerator have the same denominator. So what we want to actually do is we want to separate the fraction. Okay, so here, both of those numbers, the negatives, the 16x and the negative 8x, they are both over 4, which means that I can split this up to say 16x over 4 minus 8x over 4. It means the same thing. Remember, go back to your algebra, your LCD. They have a common denominator. We can actually go and do the opposite or the reverse, and we can split up the fraction. Once we've done that, we are now going to simplify each fraction. So this is still simplifying our individual terms. We're now just working specifically with fractions. So if we look at our first fraction, I'm running out of space here, but we'll make it work. If we consider our very first fraction, so our very first fraction here is 16x divided by 4. Still remember signs, numbers, variables. We've got a positive divided by a positive, which gives us a positive. If we then consider the numbers, 16 divided by 4 gives us 4. And then we have the x. So this first fraction simplifies to 4x. Let's go like this. If we look at our second fraction, we've got negative 8x over 4. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. The 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then we have that x. So the second term simplifies to minus 2x. And then we know that the very last thing that we do is we add and subtract our like terms. we can see here, whoops, based on what we've been given, both of these actually are like terms. Whoopsie, let's try that again. Negative 4x and where am I getting negative from? 4x and negative 2x are like terms. They both have an x in them. That means that they are like terms to each other. So I can go and subtract them, and that gives me a final simplified answer of 2x. So guys, let's not say nothing changes, but when we deal with fractions, the only difference is that we need to remember that we can separate the fractions. So that's what I wrote here in the blue on the right. We can separate the fraction in order to help us to simplify. And so when you do encounter a fraction, that is how we simplify that term. We separate it and we simplify the fractions that we get. All right. So please take a screenshot. If anyone has any questions, now is the time to raise your hand. Simtanda?
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I got the same answer, but I did it another way.
Did you say 16x minus 8x first?
Yes, ma'am.
Good, well done. So that's absolutely fine because they are like terms. You can do that. I've just chosen to do it this way because if they weren't like terms, we would have to separate the fraction. So like I said, this way works for any fraction that you get, but if you have like terms and you've done it your way, that is 100% fine.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Good, well done.
Well done, guys. You guys are doing great. You're doing really, really well.
Okay, guys, I'm hoping you...
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I hope you've taken screenshots.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so... Right, let's have a look. I know I'm jumping a bit, but I just wanted to find one that we can have a look at. Let's have a look at question D. I'm just going to change something here. Sorry, I don't like that. Oh, guys, please, we've been waiting for you to take screenshots. You can't now wake up when I'm moving on. My sweet, sweet children. Let's go. Screenshots. Right, I'm coming now. It's raining. I've left.
Okay, guys, you guys are doing really, really well. So I hope that you did take screenshots, right? And also, I think Teacher Sam is gonna just allocate now one of the questions, and we'll have to try it by ourselves. Okay. So I hope you are ready, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. So we hope that this one you're gonna give it a try, your best try. Like this, Teacher Sam and I can just watch and relax while you guys are doing the work, and then let us know when you are done, and then you put it on the chat, and let's see how you are doing, right, Teacher Sam? Can we give them maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes to do this question?
So guys, exactly. I want you to try this question. And guys, again, like we've done a lot of this. So if you're new, like Yolanda said, I completely get that you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. For the most part, you should have done algebra at school. Obviously, again, like you still might need some more practice. But I'm going to remind you again that there's all the videos on Watobe's website, okay? So if this is feeling a bit overwhelming, you need to go and watch those videos. We're only doing 2 lessons on this, okay? After today, we're moving on to equations. And so what that means is if you are not feeling comfortable, you need to now go and do that extra work and watch the videos. So there are videos, you can redo the quizzes if you want. They're all there for you. So please make sure that if you know you're not feeling super comfortable, you go and do something about it. This essentially is revising term 1 and term 2 before we move on to equations. So it's really, really important that you are asking questions, but also that you are putting in the work where you need to. Alrighty, so you're trying this one. What I will do is I'll write the 3 steps down again for you, just in case me writing it down several times already is not enough. So step 1, identify your terms. Step 2, simplify each term. And your 3rd and final step, add and subtract your like terms. Let's try to get that a bit better. Sorry, I'm not just scribbling all over the place. Terms, that doesn't look like terms. Okay, so like Yolanda says, put your answer in the chat. Let's see what we come up with. And guys, a hint, you should have 2 terms in your answer. Okay, that's my hint to you. You should have 2 terms in your answer. Good, grade 8s. Keep your answers coming. We're doing good.
Yes, my people, y'all are doing really, really good. And just remember that you did write it on your book, right? So everybody, you check on your answers when we are busy doing corrections. Right, guys? So we hope you wrote it somewhere, because on the chat you'll never find your answers anymore. But I like the participation. I like it. I like it. I like it. Teacher Sam, you let us know when we are ready.
Okay, guys, these answers, they're really good. Some of us are really close. I think we maybe made 1 or 2 really silly mistakes, and you're going to see now, like Yolanda says, when we go through. So make sure that you are correcting as you go along. That's really important. I'm going to give you one minute, and then I'm going to go through. Okay, guys, and most of you, if you haven't got it right, you're really, really close. So like I said, it's a silly mistake somewhere that you just need to correct when we go through it. But you'll have a C now. Guys, also, and I know this like probably seems self-explanatory, when you copy down questions, please make sure you copy them down correctly, because even some of the answers that I'm seeing coming through, I can see exactly where you've gone wrong. You've copied down the question incorrectly. Okay, so please just make sure that you copy your questions down properly in a test or in an exam. All right, but let's have a look. So the first thing that we do, grade 8, we identify our terms. We've got one term separated by this minus sign. So our first term is 3 times the bracket. Our second term is -4 times the bracket. Once we've done that, we need to simplify each of those terms. So what we want to now do is we want to distribute the 3 into the first bracket and the -4 into the second bracket. So if we just do our little working out block, we've got 3 times x minus 2. And if I distribute to the x, we've got 3 times x, which gives us 3x. And then we've got 3 times -2. Be careful of your signs. A positive times a negative is a negative. And then 3 times 2 is 6. So we've got -6. Then in our second term, we've got that negative 4 that we need to distribute. So negative 4x times the minus 5. Distributed in, negative 4 times x is negative 4x. And then again, be careful, you've got a negative 4 times a negative 5. We know that a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 5 is 20. So we've got plus 20. Now we look for our like terms. We've got minus 6 and plus 20. Those are both constants. They're like terms. And we've got 3x minus 4x. If you need to group them, group them. But now we can add and subtract. So 3x minus 4x is negative x. If you wrote negative 1x, guys, that's fine. But please make sure, because a lot of you didn't put an x in there, it is negative 1x. And then minus 6 plus 20 gives us positive 14. So your final answer here, negative x plus 14. All right, so be really, really careful that you have correctly done your signs. Like I said, I know that some of you have gone wrong just because of a sign. I can see that from your answer. So please double check your signs. Remember what happens when you times a negative and a positive, what happens when you times a negative and a negative. Those all affect the outcome of your answer.